Next on our program is Senator Cory Booker. I know he's on his way. I don't know if he's made it up here yet. If he hasn't, what I'm going to do in the interest of time is I'm going to introduce the panelists for the next panel, and when the senator gets here, I'm going to just interrupt and we'll move on with, or we'll hear from the senator. So our first panel is going to discuss actions industry can take to reduce costs at operating nuclear power plants. And while we're going to also have a moderator who's going to lead the questioning, what I'm going to do is we're going to welcome you to write down questions on note cards, which you should have found on your chairs. Simply hold up the cards. We'll collect them and provide them to the moderators, who will include the questions as time allows. And should you need an additional card, please just signal to my colleagues, and they'll get one to you. So I'm going to ask the panelists to come up. Dr. Mark Peters, Bill Levis, Maria Korsnick, Bill Mohl, and our moderator, David Owens. As they're walking up, I'll introduce them. Dr. Peters is the director of the Idaho National Laboratory and president of the Battelle Energy Alliance. As you probably know, the INL is DOE's lead nuclear energy laboratory, so I get to work with Dr. Peters quite closely, and I'm pleased to have him here. William Levis is President and Chief Operating Officer of PSEG Power, a position he's held since June of 2007. PSEG Power is a major unregulated independent power producer in the U.S. Maria Korsnick is the Chief Operating Officer of the Nuclear Energy Institute. Before joining NEI, Maria served as Senior Vice President of Exelon's Northeast Operations and was Acting CEO and Chief Nuclear Officer of Constellation Energy Nuclear Group. And then Bill Mohl currently serves as the president of Entergy Wholesale Commodities, with responsibility for Entergy's merchant power business. Prior to this role, Mr. Mohl served as the chairman, president, and CEO of Entergy Louisiana and Entergy Gulf States. And last, of course, I'd like to welcome our moderator, David Owens, who's the executive vice president for the Business Operations Group and Regulatory Affairs of the Edison Electric Institute. EEI is the association that represents all U.S. investor-owned electric utilities. Since the senator hasn't been able to join us just yet, David, I thought I'd ask you to come on up here, get us started, and when the senator arrives, if you'll excuse me, but I'll come on up and let him speak. Okay? Thank you, sir.
Well, good afternoon. This is a straight talk panel. Now, we heard a lot of rhetoric this morning, outstanding comments by our Secretary of Energy and by Mar Fattel. And what I'm going to try to do is just kind of set the table and then talk about solutions, tough solutions, to deal with this issue. Now, we all know that we have a series of goals as a nation that we like to achieve: reliable, affordable, and clean energy. Anybody disagree with that? Okay? We also heard a number of things about fuel and technology diversity. The Secretary spoke to that. Mar spoke to that. We heard the discussion about markets having efficient price signals to incent efficient operation of facilities and also to procure new electricity supplies. So what I want to do now is talk about those issues in the context of current operating nuclear plants. I want to talk about markets with this panel. I want to talk about solutions that they have under the rubric of reliable, affordable, and clean energy. So let's just start very, very fundamentally. Can we do anything to improve the existing operations of nuclear plants? Anything to reduce the costs and improve the operations?
I'll start with that.
I'm not sure your mic's on.
Are we on or not? There we go. Thank you. Certainly, we take our obligation at nuclear plants pretty seriously to ensure we run safe, reliable, and economic each and every day. So we're always looking for opportunities to improve in each of those areas. With that said, we recognize the challenges that are facing us today, and especially in the economic area. And so when I look at our current day, I remind our people that we have been here before. And for those of us that were in this business in the 90s, you would have heard a similar discussion where nuclear plants were shutting down because they weren't economic. Gas plants were being built. Gas was under $2. Evolving environmental regulation was coming our way. And the fact of the matter is, at that time, we were challenged because our plants were not as reliable as they should have been. And so we had a call to action during that period of time to improve our performance, and we did just that. As a result of using operating experience and essentially putting in place robust processes for how we did outages in particular, other work activities at our station so that we could replicate that success each and every day, we took a capacity factor at that period of time from 70% to over 90%. That's a 30% improvement in reliability as a result of those actions.
Bill, we'll have to continue in a minute.
I'm sorry.
Please. I'm going to have to interrupt this
Is it
discussion.
rolling?
Okay. And we'll resume.
Well, he is from New Jersey, so.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Okay, let's resume our dialogue.
I'll see if I can generate the passion or whatever.
He's got a lot of passion.
Just,
Remember,
try
this is straight talk and
Straight
tough
talk.
solutions. So I'm going to ask you to limit your response, be succinct as you possibly could. Okay? Okay, Bill.
So I will tell you, we've been here before, and with one other learning here, and that's we put certainty in a regulatory process, because at the time in the 90s there was not, and we went through a very stakeholder process with the regulator, put in a new process that provided a risk-informed basis for how we did business and helped improve safety going forward. So we are not standing still today. We're taking those lessons today and applying to our initiative we call Delivering the Nuclear Promise. This is taking a 30% now reduction in our cost structure, coincident with improving safety and reliability. The lesson we got in the 90s was if you improve reliability, you plan better, you improve your safety performance, and the indicators clearly show that. So we're going to take that next step to improve the efficiency of how we do business, to take those processes that we put in place, and frankly, over the years have added to them instead of streamlined them, and determine how to best use technology so we can engage our workforce to help us solve this going forward. So we're not standing still. I'm confident we will get there. The question is, will that be enough? Because although there are lessons of the 90s we can apply here, there are two significant differences. And those differences are restructured markets and impacts of renewables on our marketplace. And with that, I'll set up your next question for you there.
I'm going to come back to that. Good. I know, Mark, you wanted to add something to this question? If not, I'm going to take up what Bill just raised.
No, yeah, I'd like to say something. So the first thing I would like to say is I'd like to pick up on the urgency theme, because many of you all have heard me talk about the next generation and gain and accelerating innovation. But I think the way we think about accelerating innovation has to start with how we accelerate innovation to help address this challenge. And so it's a paradigm shift for the way the research establishment needs to think about the problem. We, of course, have the Light Water Reactor Sustainability Program that's been in place for several years that's done, I think, good work. But the Secretary also alluded to the Light Water Reactor, our Research Development Demonstration Working Group that came together that Kathy McCarthy from my lab helped lead with industry. And we've got a pretty substantial list of R&D needs that the existing fleet and also advanced LWRs will require to be successful. So while we can't change policy, we can certainly inform it. We can also accelerate the way we innovate. But what I would implore upon all of us is as we prioritize that, let's go fight for the necessary resources to go do the work, because in as much as innovation can help address this problem, we need everybody in this room to help us come together. And also think about how to accelerate the way we innovate. I think that's it's a paradigm shift, and it requires industry and the research establishment working together in a really different way.
Okay, so let's move to markets. I'm going to state an issue, a problem, and then I'm going to ask you for a solution. So many of us believe that markets are working pretty well. And many of us believe that FERC is doing a pretty good job. And we know that one thing about markets is you want accurate price signals. You want to be able to incent innovation and efficient operations. FERC recognizes that you need clear unit commitment schedules, you need transparency in those markets, and FERC is aware, and we said it as an industry, that they need to minimize out-of-market solutions. So let's complicate this, if we could, just for a minute. We know that these markets are evolving with very low natural gas prices and a true commitment toward renewable technologies. And we know that renewable technologies, to some degree, have some subsidies. For example, they get the investment tax credit, 30% federal investment tax credit. So now how do we take what Secretary Moniz said, how do we look at markets, and then we look at value? And we look at distortions in markets. So let's first start with distortions in markets. And I think, Bill, you were going to start talking about that a bit. Is there a distortion in the markets that we need to address?
Absolutely.
And what is it?
Well, you don't really have true markets. So if anyone thinks the markets are working correctly, you don't understand what a market is. So what we have right now is a hybrid market.
Okay.
You have a hybrid market where you have some market mechanisms for the sale of capacity and energy that are heavily influenced by outside market forces, such as subsidized renewables, such as out-of-market contracts, and the fact that you don't value all the attributes of the various generators that participate in the markets.
Okay.
So there's no silver bullet here as it relates to fixing the markets, but here's what I would say are solutions.
Okay.
First of all, you need to put a price on carbon. Okay, you need to be able to value the carbon-free generation that nuclear provides.
But that takes an act of Congress, so we
Not
can't do that.
necessarily.
Okay,
Not
tell me how we do it.
necessarily. So there's states that are putting programs in place, clean
Okay.
energy standards, New York, Illinois, Massachusetts. Now, do I agree with every way they are doing it? May or may not, but the fact is they recognize you need to put a value on carbon.
So why should FERC pay attention to what a state does?
Well, FERC's supposedly responsible for the markets.
Okay.
And so if you're responsible for the markets, you need to understand the markets and what influences the markets.
Okay. So you're saying FERC should give deference then to states that are doing this?
If the federal government can't take the lead in putting a price on carbon, then the states are going to have to do that. Where FERC comes in is making sure that they got the right market mechanisms. That means price formation is correct for both capacity, for energy. Remember, nuclear plants generate 85% of their revenue stream from energy. FERC has been looking at energy price formation and studying it for a number of years and made absolutely no progress. We talk about a sense of urgency. That's where we need a sense of urgency. We also need to look at ancillary markets to be able to value the other attributes that nuclear generation provides, such as baseload reliability, voltage support, et cetera, and put a value on that.
Isn't FERC beginning to look at ancillary services with frequency response and a lot of other proposals that they have before them?
Absolutely. They're beginning, but
Yes.
my point is the sense of urgency on dealing with all these issues is simply not there.
But how do you evaluate a base load plant? Give me an attribute of a base load facility that I would say is not an attribute of a natural gas-fired facility.
Just very simple, on-site fuel for reliability purposes.
Okay.
Okay, you have a nuclear plant, a coal plant has on-site fuel. That's very valuable, especially during extremely tight conditions. Many natural gas plants do not have firm gas supply. They do not have storage. So there's a huge distinction there between how you value those resources and how you compensate those resources for what they provide to the market.
So how does the RTO take all of it? I'm going to listen to you too, Maria. Just give me a sec. So both of you, then does an RTO, if I'm doing a pricing model, how in the world do I take those things into account?
There's been some that have put it into place, such as ISO New England. The problem is all they valued is oil backup for gas plants and not provided similar credit for on-site fuel at nuclear or coal plants.
I see.
So you can value these types of things.
Maria, you have any points you want to add to this?
I just wanted to give an example. I don't know if this is on. I just wanted to provide an example that what Bill mentioned, really happened in the polar vortex time frame, right, where, in fact, you had a lot of gas, but then that gas supply wanted to go to home heating. And so I know in PJM, for example, the system was under stress in that case. And that's a perfect example where that fuel firmness, we call it, the fact that you have that on-site supply at nuclear, right? You put your nuclear plant together, it has 18 months or 24 months of supply. That means I don't need a fuel truck, I don't need a pipeline, I don't need a train load or a truckload of anything. That's a valuable resource, and that is something that is distinguishing for the nuclear plants and not particularly valued. Now, I realize we looked at that lessons learned, and that partly went into the PJM capacity market changes that were made, which said, hey, if you're very reliable, then you'll bid into this highly reliable and get more for capacity payment. So I appreciate that there was some fix, but I do want to acknowledge that that essentially played out, that ability and that fuel firmness, so it's real.
So let me see where we are, and then I'm going to have the other bill comment on this. What I think I heard you say with respect to markets, I think I heard you say, well, there are out-of-market elements that are distorting the markets. There are renewables that have subsidies that are distorting the markets, and that there are valuation approaches that are not considered in the markets.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
Okay. So what else is missing? If we're looking at markets and we're trying to fix this, and these things that you just described seem very complex, and they seem like they take a lot of time to fix.
It's like anything. I mean, we've been working on this probably for the last 3 years. There are solutions to these, but trying to get those ideas incorporated when you're dealing with a number of different stakeholders,
Yes.
is frankly a challenge, to be honest.
So having a dialogue involving state commissioners and federal regulators like FERC and DOE, maybe that's what this summit should be about. You think that could move the ball a bit?
I think that would certainly help, because there's a disconnect, and just to be perfectly frank, is now that we've put in a lot of cases state politicians are determining energy policies, they have a lot of different incentives, and so at some point you need a governing body that provides some guidance as to what the principles are that you need for energy policy, and it simply cannot be left to individual states to determine everything on their own.
So, Bill Lewis, what are your views on this? Anything that was missed in this dialogue that we're having with respect to markets?
Well, there's two pieces. In the market, or what we see happen is where there's out-of-merit generation,
Yes.
or understanding of what it is that's causing that, so that it can be open to the marketplace, so that market solutions can be brought to bear to resolve that. There are still other services that are cost of service and not market-based. Black start and reactive power are two of those
Okay,
that are cost
good.
of service and not a market. So getting the markets to involve is important. The other piece on the market piece, the points that Bill is making about the state, is the subsidization of renewables. These subsidies were put in place, well-intended, with the right idea, but frankly at a different time. And that different time was when the price of gas was high, and the load was growing at a fairly constant and steady rate. And it's time to go reset our expectations about what we're looking for there, because the time is different now. And what we're spending on renewables versus the return is, I think, the debate that needs to be had here. So the other attribute that Bill referred to, where we think nuclear gets rewarded, is the fact that it produces electricity without carbon, without greenhouse gas emissions.
Right.
In the recognition of that in the marketplace that we see from solar and wind, and I give you some numbers from my state, for example, because most of these are state dependent. If I generate a megawatt hour of electricity from my solar panel in New Jersey, that's worth about $480. $480. If I generate one from wind, that's worth about $15. And here's where it gets more fun, because we always talk about renewables being solar and wind. And in fact, one of the challenges here is we don't have a common definition of what renewable is. And so we strayed from the problem statement from reducing carbon, reducing greenhouse gases, to increasing renewables. So in our state, renewables fit in the solar, wind, and wind is a Category 1 renewable. Also in Tier 1 REC is landfill gas. So that's actually the largest source of renewable energy in New Jersey. That comes from trash. A Tier 2 REC, that's worth about $15 a megawatt hour, by the way. So that's a revenue source plus capacity and energy on top of that for landfill gas use. A Tier 2 REC would be a trash plant, wood burning plant. That's worth about $10 a megawatt hour. And I can give you the technical explanation on why we're incenting the generation of trash, but that's exactly what we're doing. From using it from a landfill, using it in a trash plant, and if you look at the environmental profile of that trash plant, I'm telling you my coal plant profile is better than that. And so well-intended, unintended consequences, we forgot the problem we were trying to solve here, and that's what we got to move on to. And if I looked at what we pay in New Jersey, it's about $500 million this year. And if I equally weight the nuclear piece from a carbon-free standpoint, that's about $20 a megawatt hour. Nuclear should be being paid for providing carbon-free energy.
Okay, let's do this. We're going to have a lightning round, and then we're going to go to the audience. Remember, this is straight talk with tough solutions. So let's go now, and tell me, and I'm going to start from, maybe I'll start, and I know he's not going to have an answer, but I'm going to start with him anyway. I'm going to start with Mark. So tell me, what should be a policy fix at the state level?
The state level.
Yes.
You're going to ask the national lab guy what the policy.
That's why I did it.
That's why you started with me. Clean energy standard.
A what?
Clean energy standard.
A clean energy standard. And would you include in that clean energy standard nuclear?
That's why I said clean energy standard.
Okay, good. So you would change the definition.
Yes, I would.
So you would change RPSs to
Clean energy standards.
Okay, CESs.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me shake this up a little. What would you say, Maria? Give me one state solution, one state fix.
Well, actually, Ohio tried for this with a long-term PPA, but that would be an example of something that could be an answer. Again, if FERC isn't going to take some of the responsibility that we think that they should, then they need to give deference to the states and give the states the latitude to solve the problem that they need.
So state flexibility.
State flexibility.
Okay, and FERC given deference.
That's correct.
Okay, Bill, you got one other?
You know, I guess the other thing is it's really eliminate out-of-market solutions. I mean, we put aside RPS, but
Sure.
A lot of states do a lot of different projects for their own political benefit.
Oh, eliminate them and make all this stuff transparent. Let us know what you're doing.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, good. Okay, any other views on a state fix? Okay.
Don't pick winners and losers. Just pick the.
Don't pick winners and losers.
Gotta be
Good.
fixed.
Okay, I like that. I want things that we can act on,
Yep.
okay, in the short term, because of the urgency that the Secretary spoke to and the urgency that Marv spoke to. I look at what our industry has achieved. If you look at 2005 and you look today, we have a 20% reduction in CO2 emissions. I'm very scared that that's going to go through the roof if we have these nuclear facilities shut down. Okay, what are the FERC fixes that we haven't talked about? What would you have FERC do that we have not talked about? Second bill, Bill Lewis, what would you have FERC do?
Well, Bill alluded to this issue before.
Don't repeat, something new.
Something new.
Anything new? Okay, nothing new? That's okay.
No, there are plenty of rules out there now that if enforced.
Yeah, we don't want to encumber FERC. We want to make it simple. So, Bill Mohl, anything else?
Very simply, eliminate uplift. I mean, that would be a good
Eliminate
step in the right
uplift.
direction on LMPs.
Okay, good. And in doing all of this, should FERC be in a dialogue with the NARUC about these issues?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's another recommendation. We really need to enliven NARUC now to take this as a big issue that they talk about. It needs to be on the summer agenda. It needs to be on the winter agenda, right? So we're going to all work to do that. Okay, I see the executive director of NARUC here, and he's taking notes, so I think he gets it too. So now, what can DOE do? The secretary spoke very vibrantly about, his concerns about premature shutdown of nuclear plants. Now, what advice are we going to give the Secretary? What can DOE do?
Well, I would assume that out of their QER, they're going to provide some high-level guidance on where the problems are and what some of the potential solutions are, and serve as a leader in terms of help facilitate those type of things. As he said, he can't do anything maybe specifically.
Yes.
But the leadership is critical in getting everyone.
So he can encourage the collaborations. He can participate actively in it.
Right.
He can talk about the urgency of with solutions.
And meet with the stakeholders.
And
to
meet with the
understand more
stakeholders.
details about the potential
Okay,
solutions.
good. And isn't there an educational component? The American public may not have the slightest idea of what we're talking about. Is there an educational component, an outreach component to the American public? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marie.
Well, and I was just going to also say there's a world leadership component, and I think DOE plays on that stage as well. And the reality is that the United States is looked at around the world for the decisions that we make. And we're making, very short-term and poor strategic decisions today. And we need to take that on. And what we do here, others will copy. And we should look at that and look at the standards we set.
Mark, you were nodding. Did you? Oh, I'm sorry.
If I could just add a little bit to that. We're talking about commercial nuclear power here today. I don't think we can forget that there's another 100 nuclear plants running in this country, and that's in the United States Navy.
Yes.
There's also, we have nuclear weapons, and all these require infrastructure to support. So to the extent that DOE can bring all those parties together to make sure that there's a national issue, that all these, three areas can progress simultaneously.
Good. Good.
Yeah, maybe it's repeating, but I'd like to reemphasize the analysis and communication platform.
Okay.
The common way of talking about the problem, the common analysis. The QER does some of that,
Yes.
but I think the federal government can provide that, because I think somewhat from an outside perspective, this is a very confusing issue, and it's hard for everybody to get on the same page. So I think that would be a huge role for the federal government.
Okay, good. Now we're going to open it up to you. And I don't want you to just ask general questions. Let's try to stay focused on what we're trying to do here. This is straight talk with tough solutions. So let's ask some questions about these tough solutions. What hasn't the panel dealt with? Come on, you're not a shy group. Oh, yeah, we have cards, please. Write them on your cards. Okay, good. Okay, so I got a question. What can industry do to solve the problem or help solve it?
I think Bill addressed that a bit in terms of talking about delivering the nuclear promise. We addressed it a bit from the cost side. I guess I just want to share that delivering the nuclear promise really has a cost and a revenue component to it. The cost side of it, of course, is we are looking to ensure that we're the most efficient that we can be. And over years and years of regulation, internal regulation included, we're not as efficient in some cases, and we've obviously taken that on. But we're also, again, looking at the revenue solutions, many of which that we're discussing here, and wanting to make sure that as an industry that we're speaking strongly with one voice in terms of the necessary and the urgency that we have to solve these problems.
I think it was you, Mark, that spoke to, no, it wasn't. It was Bill, 30% reduction of the operating costs of nuclear plants.
That's correct.
What comprises that?
Well, if you look at the costs, obviously the biggest component of that is the people we have. So in using our people as efficiently as we can is important. So that's why we work looking at our various work streams of how we fix and repair equipment in a plant, how we engineer solutions to issues in the plant to be able to reduce those costs, and in using technology as our friend to do that. And so we have robust processes. Now we have to make sure that those processes are more efficient going forward. And there are simple things. So, for example, how we bring people in and badge them at a plant. It takes about 5 days to do that. We're trying to figure out how to do that in 15 minutes. It is a big cost of driving, but just bringing people in and getting them badged at a plant. Now we just want to get them to work sooner.
So what would that be? Just translate this to me. I heard a facility in Illinois which is producing energy at 2.8 cents per kilowatt hour.
Well, it gets them down to 2.5 cents or 2.4. But the question is that enough? And we're saying
that's
not
what
enough yet because we need these other things.
And why isn't it enough? Why bringing down the price to 2.5 cents doesn't make that plant operational or competitive.
Every area of the country is a little different. The particular challenge the Midwest has is wind.
Okay, so
That,
wind technologies.
Yeah, where
I
it's
see. And
subsidized at essentially 22 cents.
so does the wind require those facilities to have negative pricing in nighttime hours?
There are periods of time where the load is low at night, especially in the shoulder months, where wind can supply all the energy, and therefore there will be a negative price signal sent. And I don't know many plants that can operate with a negative price signal.
I see. Okay, so is that a flaw in the markets, or is that a flaw with subsidies?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, should a market allow
I
a
got
negative
you.
price
I
signal?
got
to be
it.
sent? Yes.
I just want everyone to see how complicated this is.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts.
Okay, it's
But I
not a
also-
simple solution, folks.
A couple more examples
Yes.
that bring in some of the federal investment and partnership with industry that builds on what you just heard is outage control and computer-based procedures.
That's right. That's right.
There's things that the industry was doing anyway, but the government's helping supplement some of that, going to
Yes.
digital I&C overall.
Yes.
And that's LW, the light water reactor sustainability examples that are already, some of which are already hitting the market.
Okay, good. Other questions from the audience? Any more cards? Yes, okay, please. I can't answer them all because we're going to be constrained on time. Okay, good. Okay, let's talk about energy security and the whole notion of shutting down nuclear facilities. So how does energy security factor into evolving markets and RTO markets and so forth? How does energy security? I don't see that as being a price factor. So how do you take that into account?
Well, for example, up in the Northeast, I mean, when you think about overall energy security, they're looking at replacing a lot of the existing facilities with imports from places such as Canada, hydropower. So now you're taking that secure nuclear or other type of resource, and now that's going into another country. So how comfortable do you feel about that? You know, or are we better off from a security perspective having these facilities and controlling our own destiny and maintaining the jobs within the U.S.?
Okay.
David, if I could add one thing, too. I mean,
Please.
the path we're on right now is we'll be 60% dependent on gas by 2040.
Yeah,
just with some simple assumptions.
Yes.
Anybody try to build a gas pipeline recently? We're going through that. You don't make many friends. Right. And so if we want to go that way as a nation, that's fine, but we better build the infrastructure to support it. And I will tell you right now, we are not.
But I would also say that's also a federal conversation.
That's a federal
It's a federal conversation.
It really
so we ask
is.
about what, you know, how do you measure it? I don't know, but I do know that we want to be energy secure.
When we look at wholesale electricity markets, do we factor in the need for infrastructure investment in those price signals?
Not always. No.
Not always.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Is that something else that needs to be considered when you look at the whole basket of approaches?
Yeah, I mean, for example, in the Northeast, what you're looking at is, you know, having other customers subsidize the cost of pipelines to facilitate supply to other generators. Again, that puts people on an uneven playing field, has unintended consequences.
Okay, good, good.
But I would put energy security and national security, you heard the
I
congressman.
would too.
Yeah,
I would too.
The congressman spoke to it very eloquently.
Yes.
This is about national security.
Yes, I would totally agree with
Let me
you.
add one other thing, David. And so
Please.
Bill and I are both dealing with an interesting technical issue at our plants right now. It is hard to find people to help fix it. There are
Okay.
2 machines in the world available now to help us.
So skills.
1 crew to help us, because the nuclear infrastructure is fading away and suppliers are not investing in tooling and equipment and those sorts of things for us. So in order to keep that supply base alive, the folks are have to see some return on their investment too. So my critical path right now is waiting for Bill to get done.
Right.
That's the truth.
So that's a DOE issue, that's a labor issue, that's a Department of Commerce issue, that's a huge issue. So if we're talking about this broader dialogue, with specifics, short-term specifics about how we solve some of these challenges, they have to be in the discussion as well. Okay, good. 2 minutes. Okay. Has this been helpful? You know what frustrates me, though? The answers were good answers. I just don't know where to start. Okay? I don't know where we put the priorities. Do we fix the markets? Do we make the markets look more at the value-based approaches? I don't know. Do we tell FERC, move out of the way and let the states do it? I don't know. I mean, this is big and tough stuff. But it means that we don't need to just have 2 summits a year. We need to be engaged right now, very comprehensively, on this very difficult set of issues. Please join me in thanking the panel for their outstanding responses.